Hello, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Left Brain Professionals. I'm Stephen Bressler, and I'll be your host moderator today. If you need help at any time, you can email us at support@leftbrainpro.com or use the chat function within the Flow platform. Let's go over just a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is hosted on the Flow platform. You should see a small toolbar with 4 icons in the top right-hand corner of your browser. The first button will mute the audio. The second button will put the webinar into full screen mode. The third button enables the chat and Q&A. And the fourth button will enable the settings. Please enter your content questions into the Q&A panel at any time during the presentation. We'll address as many questions as we can. Use the chat feature to chat with hosts, presenters, and other attendees. Please do not enter your content questions in the chat panel as they may get lost among other conversations. If you do have a connection or audio issue, we have a couple of solutions for you to try. Turn off your VPN. Test the system using the links provided. Exit and re-enter the webinar. Try to use a different browser or connect from your personal PC, phone, or tablet. And the final tip is to potentially contact Flow support. In order to receive credit for today's presentation, you must respond to 3 out of 4 of the polling questions. Certificates are generated automatically and will be emailed within 48 hours after the completion of the webinar. And a survey will display in your browser at the end of today's webinar. And please take a few moments to answer the questions and provide any feedback. The recording of today's presentation will be available on our YouTube channel, and the link will be included in a follow-up email. So thank you for your attention, and without further delay, I will turn it over to Robert for today's content.
All right, good afternoon, welcome. Thank you for joining us again. Today's webinar is about automating QuickBooks invoices. As always, we're here to talk about and help government contractors. A little bit about us if you're new to our webinar series. We are a boutique accounting firm in that we work only with government contractors. We specialize in accounting system design, implementation, audit support. We also do some monthly outsourced accounting, and types of projects that we get involved with are the SF 1408 pre-award accounting system survey. We do a lot of work with indirect rates, incurred cost proposal, and really pretty much anything DCAA oriented. You've already seen and heard from my colleague Steve. Our learning objectives for today, at the end of our roughly 1 hour together, you should be able to identify labor categories and services for QuickBooks items, describe the QuickBooks invoice creation process, and list some tools to aid in time and expense data collection. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about this webinar before we get into it. A couple of things. We do have a previous webinar where we touched on some other aspects of automated bookkeeping. You can download the PDF. You should see a little download button kind of in the bottom left corner of your browser. We'll also have this available in the follow-up email, but there's some other tools out there around automated bookkeeping. Today, we're doing really specifically the invoicing aspect and show you how you can automate some of your invoicing. The other thing that I want to set the stage for is that I've got a mixture of slides. So I've got some screenshots on the slides, and then I've set up a couple demos to walk you through what some of this actually looks like inside of QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. I'm going to ask in advance for your patience should we encounter any kind of technical issues. You can do all the setup and testing, and invariably by the time you get to doing the demo, something goes wrong. I hope that's not the case today, but I think we've got everything ready for you. All right, let's talk about, well, the other thing that I want to clarify is that I will be talking about both, I'll be talking about QuickBooks in general. I'll be talking about QuickBooks Online and Desktop, and I'll try to clarify. And obviously, when we're on the screen, I'll be showing you uh, there are a lot of similarities in the functionality, but there certainly are some differences in the functionality as well. So you'll just want to be aware of whether you're using QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop. And let's get our first polling question up. Give me 1 second to launch that on the screen. All right, Steve, if you want to do that. It looks like, Steve, you're offline. So I'll go ahead and read this. How automated is your invoicing process? 100%, mostly, very little, or not at all. And I see we've got 30 people already have voted. I'll give you guys a few more seconds, and just really quickly, it looks like a very small percent say 100% automated, and really about 80% are somewhere between mostly and very little. So it sounds like most of you have done something, which is good, and hopefully you'll pick up a couple of ideas as we go through the rest of the content here. So let me get back to the slides. All right. I'm going to go basically through some prerequisites, not for this course, but some things that you need to have set up really in order to get the most out of the being able to automate this process. And primarily, we're talking about time and expense, right? So at the end of the month, you've got to generate invoices for your customer, and you want to be able to make that as quick and easy as possible. This is where I also need to pause and say, I realize that when we're working with government contractors, oftentimes you've got to submit stuff in a portal. If you've got 10 different government contract or prime contractor customers that you're dealing with, then it's very likely you might have 10 different formats you have to submit stuff in. So this is not a deep dive into how to maybe change some of those formats of the invoices in QuickBooks, though there is some ability to do that. And even still, many times, you still have to put something in their format, or again, put something in their portal. But the goal here is to help you gather the information, develop an accurate invoice in a timely manner. Certainly, you need to have the invoice created in your system to be able to receive funds against it. And hopefully, it's a good piece of information that you can use when, again, if you've got to fill out a client's template or use their portal. All right. In order for this to work, you need to have items set up inside of QuickBooks, and then you're going to want to synchronize those items with the tools that you're using. When we get to the timekeeping portion here in a little bit, you're going to see that I'm using a tool called Our Time, H-O-U-R. That's our preferred provider that we've got a partnership with. Obviously, there are other timekeeping solutions that are out there. And then when I get to the expense reporting, I'm going to be showing you Tally, T-A-L-L-I-E. Again, that's the partner that we have and resell. We resell both of those. There are other expense providers out there. The one thing that I would tell you in terms of, particularly in terms of timekeeping, is obviously you ensure that you're working with a timekeeping tool that can be DCAA compliant, that they have the appropriate mechanisms in place. Not going to do a deep dive on that today. Again, we've got some of that information in other webinars. And I would tell you to go back and look at that automating accounting overall, because we've got a lot of other tools that we talk about there. So what are the things that you need to have set up? You need to have your employees and your customers and projects set up. You will set those up in QuickBooks, and then you will, that will always be your starting point. And then you will synchronize those with those tools. And again, there's Expensify, there's Harvest, there's some other apps out there. The functionality is pretty similar, and this concept again of starting in QuickBooks and synchronizing to those tools is the way you want to work. If you get into one of those tools and you realize an employee is missing, a job code is missing, a labor category, something, you're like, hey, wait a minute, I don't have the option that I think I should. That should be a reminder for you to go back to QuickBooks. And again, whether it's QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop, it should be a reminder for you to go back to QuickBooks, make the correction there, resynchronize so that the data is available in the other tool. Now, some of those tools will allow you to create a project or an employee or something in the tool, but then what we find is then when you try to synchronize that back to QuickBooks, it can cause problems. So that's why our focus here is always QuickBooks is your starting point, synchronize to the other tool in order, again, whether it's employees, vendors, any of that kind of stuff. And then what you're bringing back through the synchronization process, the actual time entry or the expense entry. Time data, your employees are going to enter and submit their time. Supervisors will review and approve the time, and the administrator will export or synchronize the time. And all of that's going to occur in your timekeeping tool, right? So employees log in, they enter, they click a submit button. It's now in a queue for a supervisor or a manager to see. Right, they can review it, they can approve it, and then once it's in a fully approved status, then whoever, could be accounting, payroll, whatever that functionality is in your organization, then they have the ability to export or synchronize that time back to QuickBooks so that it's then available for invoicing and payroll. The expense reporting is going to be the same basic functionality, right? Your employees are going to log into the expense reporting tool. They're going to enter and submit their expenses, and that could, and both of these, whether it's timekeeping or expense reporting, could be a web browser, could be a phone app. So obviously in today's world, right, we do pretty much everything on our phones. Most of your expense reporting tools, and especially Tally, what's nice is if you're out traveling, and I'm right now in the middle of a 15-day trip, so I'm ready to go home and sleep in my own bed for a couple of nights. But I've been out on the road a lot, getting a lot of receipts. And so what's nice is, right, I've got the app on my phone. I take a picture, when I'm sitting at the gas station. I mean, I will literally get the receipt out of the gas pump. I will take a picture of it right there, and then I've already got it. Same thing if I'm dining out, whatever that is, I snap a picture, and now, I've already got my information. I don't have to wait, to get back to a hotel or somewhere else and try to figure out, what happened to that receipt. So take advantage of those types of things. Again, with expenses, then it's going to go into some type of queue for the supervisor to review and approve. Once everything is approved, then it can be exported and synchronized. And so I see somebody saying what tool you're talking about. Right now, again, I'm talking about the concept at a generic level from a timekeeping and an expense reporting. When I get to the timekeeping here in a couple of minutes with the screenshots, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a live demo for both. The keeping tool that we use is one called Our Timesheet, HOUR. And the expense reporting tool that we use is called Tally, TALLIE. And you'll see both of those here in just a couple of moments. The other thing that you'll need to make sure you have set up are your billing rate levels. And so this is where you're going to need, you probably will create like a matrix in Excel, and then be able to enter that, again, whether you're using QuickBooks Online or Desktop. Functionality is similar, but it is a little bit different. But essentially what you need from a timekeeping perspective, right, assuming that you are invoicing by labor category, then you're going to need an item for each labor category. And then you'll need a price for that labor category, right? So then when somebody enters the time, it goes through the system, it comes to the invoicing, which you'll see in a little bit. It's going to pop up, and and if that labor category is billed at $100 an hour, then the system automatically recognizes that and populates that on the invoice. Now you might say, Robert, well, what if we have different prices for different customers, or what if that price changes by option year, right? So maybe the base year was $100 an hour, maybe option year 1 is 110, option year 2 is 120, or whatever that amount is. So there are some ways to do that. Again, it's going to vary a little bit between online and desktop. I'll start actually with desktop. So there are a few versions of desktop, not every version, but some of the versions of desktop support what they call billing rate levels. And so those billing rate levels allow you to go in and set up pricing with discounts and other kinds of things, which you have some functionality there. Otherwise, what you would do in both online and desktop is you would create, so you might have, and I think we have one called Computer Programmer in our demo data to show you today. You might create, computer program year 1, computer programmer year 2, computer programmer year 3, and then have the appropriate pricing information in there. So there are a couple of different ways to do it. Part of it is going to depend as well, how your contracts are set, how your organization operates. What I just talked about was the ability to do this by labor category, by hour, right? So pretty much the way we work as accountants, right? If you hire us, we're going to bill you by the hour. Attorneys do that, right? A lot of companies do that. But you might have something where you bill by the service, right? So you might say, hey, we'll do an air conditioning tune-up, and it's $125. And it's $125 whether it takes me half an hour or an hour and a half to do that. It's $125 for an air conditioner tune-up. So you can also set up those types of services as well, where it's a flat rate per the unit of performing the service, not necessarily a by hour. We have a client that actually does a little bit of both. A lot of what they do is hourly work, but they have a few types of things that they do. In particular, they do some reporting and a couple of things where when they write up the report that goes with the work that they've done, they charge a flat rate to write the report. And again, whether it takes them 2 hours or 10 hours to write that report, it's a flat rate. And so you can set up and do both at the same time. You just need to make sure that they're set up. So some of the things you need to be thinking about and the information that you would need to gather if you're going to do this is that you would need a list of all your contracts, a list of labor categories, a list of the prices that go with those, any other services, that kind of stuff you would need to pull in so that you'd be ready to enter this. And I'm going to take a few questions as we go along. If I see them pop up and it's right in line, I try to do that. So James says, doesn't it get confusing if you have so many labor rates for each contract, option year, labor category, et cetera? It can, yes, without a doubt. It can be a little bit confusing. So here's part of my answer to that. The first is it's still a lot easier to build and maintain that on the front end than it is to try to sort it out at the invoicing stage, right? So often one of the things that we hear from clients, they say, man, we get to the end of the month and it's taken us several hours, sometimes several days to create all of our invoices. I had a client that they said, it can take us an entire day to create one invoice for one of our customers, right? Because there's so much going on. So then what you can do, again, there's some, if you do a little bit of the front end work to set it up, then actually in the timekeeping, and I'll show you this when we get there, when you get into the timekeeping and the reporting tools, you can do some linkages, you can put some start to stop dates. There's some other things that you can do to limit it so that the employee isn't necessarily going, okay, wait a minute, which one of these labor categories and which option year? So they're not having to do that. There are some ways to still narrow that down so the employees are, that employee can only select the labor category that's associated with them, and they can only, select the labor category that's been associated with that contract. So see that on the screen here in a couple of moments. With that, let's do another poll. And Steve, I don't know if your audio is working. We'll see here.
Hello. Hopefully my microphone is working.
Yes.
And you can hear me. Our second poll question. Items must have pricing to get full advantage of automation. True or false? So we'll give you about 20 or 30 seconds. And I see, the votes are pouring in already. So we're moving right along. We'll go ahead. We have probably about 90% in, and I'll give 10 more seconds. Okay. Looks like most folks said true, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll.
And true is the correct answer, right? If you're going to get the full advantage and maximize the automation, then obviously having all that pricing information in there is going to help you get there. All right, so what I have now are some screenshots. Again, we'll flip over in a few moments, and we will do a little bit of a live demo. But I wanted to have screenshots in the PowerPoint, so if you download it, you take it with you, you can kind of see what's going on. What you're going to see here is QuickBooks Online. These are my employees, and so you'll see that I've got basic employees set up. They've got a pay rate. That's going to be one of the key things that's going to carry the cost information type through when we do stuff later. But I've got my employees set up. So now if my employees are set up and I synchronize, I set up my link to my timekeeping tool, to my reporting tool. Now my employees are already pulled in and they're ready to go. And again, as a reminder, if you're in that tool and you're administering something, say, hey, we just hired a new employee, I don't see them, don't add them inside of the timekeeping tool or inside of the expense reporting tool. Make sure you go back to QuickBooks and add them in there. And if you look in QuickBooks and you see, well, I see them, but they're not synchronizing, then there's probably a setup issue. And the thing that I will tell you, the way most of these tools, these external tools work, and again, there's Harvest, there's Expensify, I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but the way most of them work is by the employee's email address. And so if you set up the employee, but you forgot to enter an email address, then it won't synchronize to that tool. So that's usually one of the first things I look for, is if the person is missing, make sure they've got an email address. And then obviously, if you're looking at it and you say, hey, it looks like everything is correct, but they're still not there, then you'd want to contact your technical support and try to figure out why they're not synchronizing. We said that you would need to set up items. And so what you'll see here, again, inside of QuickBooks is what they call products and services, but these really are your items. What you'll notice, the way this particular one here, is that the 100 NSA is the top level job. The base year is the next level. And then underneath of that, you see some labor categories. So this is where you build that nest, you know, the tree or outline function, whatever you want to call it, but you're nesting these layers underneath. So this is one way to do it. I mean, again, there can be other ways. It's going to depend a little bit on how your organization operates, how many different labor categories, how many different contracts that you have. But hopefully what you're going to see here is a way to do this. You'll notice in that sales price column that there is no price. It's 0 for those top 2 levels because, right, we don't bill that level. We're not billing that item. We're billing the lower level items of the computer programmer, the project manager, and a senior programmer. And you'll see that there are prices. Now, I didn't do screenshots for all of the items, excuse me, but I do have a little bit more. And basically what you'll see again is option year 1, option year 2, the same kind of thing, right? And you can see that those prices change in each of those years. And continuing down in the layout there. The other, so, and this, I've got screenshots from a couple of different things. This particular screenshot here is from our internal QuickBooks Online. What I wanted to show you here, because our demo data, I need to do some more working with it. Our demo data only has the labor category kind of set up, but this here shows you other items that could be sold. So for example, this again could be a situation where you have other services, so a flat rate type of service that you could have set up, and then some flat rate items. These are, they're called a service inside of QuickBooks to make it work correctly. But for example, we resell Paylocity payroll services. And so we've got these kinds of things set up so that when we enter the information through expense reporting or as an invoice, you know, if you're entering the invoice in QuickBooks and you use the item entry instead of the, so if you, and I'll have to try to make sure to pull that up and show you, but if you're entering a bill or an expense in QuickBooks Online, if you use the item entry portion and not the account or the chart entry portion, you can actually select these items and then you can mark them billables, right? So you get your payroll, you get your invoice from Paylocity, you know which items go to which customer of yours, you set up that on your thing, and then it's going to flow through the invoice. I'll show you basically what that looks like when we get to the online demo here in a couple of minutes. Now, our timesheet. So I'm not going to show you every possible scenario between QuickBooks Online and Desktop and the hour timesheet and Tally. For the hour timesheet, for the hour timesheet and Tally, I'm going to focus on our QuickBooks Online synchronization that we've got set up because it's a little bit easier and faster to demo here. What you're going to see here is that after I logged in and I synchronized, all of my employees are available over on the right. But what this particular screen is showing the charge code. So this is where I set up and I say which service item is available to which contract, right? So you can see here, and actually I see an error in the way we got this set up, but that's all right. You can see that on the left, I've got my customer job set up and it says 100 NASA. So I would go over to my service items and I would assign all of my 100 NASA service items to my 100 NASA project, right? And then I would go to my next project and I would select the appropriate labor categories or service items and assign them to that contract. So again, yes, a little bit of setup on the front end for you or whoever's administering this, but you can see then where this is where you start to drill down and you're limiting what the employee can see and enter, and it gets you to a point of making this, I don't want to say failure proof, because that's not necessarily true, but you do minimize errors in invoicing and timekeeping because you're setting up so that only that employee who should be seeing that project can see the project from a timekeeping and expense reporting perspective. They can only see their labor category, and then you can further, break this down for the labor category by year if that's how you have it set up. And then again, you can also put in those start and end dates. And so when you trip over the date for the option year, then your employee is automatically only going to see option one. They're no longer going to see the base year labor category within their thing. And it might otherwise look the same to them, right? They're going to say, I'm a computer programmer. It still says computer programmer in my drop down for my labor category. They may not notice the difference, but you're going to have it set up so that hey, through December 31st was base year and January 1st was option year one, and then your reporting and your pricing and everything is going to be correct for your perspective. And then this screen is the employee setup, and this is where I actually go through and I assign the specific service item to the employee. So what you'll see is that on the left, I have Emily Brown selected. And then what you're seeing kind of in the middle of the screen are the jobs that she's been assigned, as well as the service items. And again, I apologize. You'll just have to ignore that we've got an error in our demo setup here of the service item associated with the customer. But you can see the basic concept here again, that I've associated my service item with my customer. And now I've taken that particular computer programmer was my service item and assigned it to that employee. And now when that employee logs in, and I'll show you this when we actually get into the tool, when they do their drop down, that's all they see because that's all that's been assigned to them. And then a sample timesheet. This is just what one looks like inside of our timesheet. You will notice there that the customer is visible. The job is blank on this one, and in this particular customer setup in our demo data, there's not a job underneath of it, but typically what you would want to have is top level customer, next level be, contract job, and then underneath of that would be any cleanse as appropriate, so that you get the proper hierarchy and reporting that flows through again to your timekeeping and expense reporting. And then you get that data back into your accounting system so that you can do invoicing at the CLIN level, you go to reporting at the CLIN level as necessary. What you'll see here, again, customer, if there was a job, it would be selected, and you'll see the service item. It just says computer programmer, and then they enter their time here and submit it. All right, Tally, and Tally, Unfortunate to say, I was working in the demo account this morning and I broke our demo account. So I'm glad it was only the demo account that I broke. But I'm going to be somewhat limited in what I can show you because I messed it up. But luckily I have some screenshots here. Again, this is another demo account. So you can see that my list of employees has pulled over and synchronized. So they're now available to be used. My active projects are here. So again, whatever my customer project setup is in QuickBooks is automatically going to pull in and be available. What I want you to notice here, you see this tracking, and you see it says 0 people, 1 people, 0 people, 1 people kind of stuff. This is where I can go into that individual project and I can select who has the ability to charge expenses against it. And so, so there's a couple of things, right? We might have some projects where we are, we didn't bid travel or see any travel expenses for it. And so I would go into Tally and I would block travel for, right? I would block people being able to enter an expense report against that project because there shouldn't be any, expenses against it. Now, the other thing I can do is go in and say, yes, there is travel or types of expenses that we're expecting. However, of my 20 employees, only 3 employees are assigned to that project. I can go in and down select which 3 employees now have the ability to see that project. So again, what's really nice is I make it easy for my employees when they log in and they click the drop down, they're only seeing the jobs that they're allowed to charge. So it makes it easier for them and they're not random, willy-nilly picking something. And then, the other thing is that I'm also being compliant to my project, whether it's in terms of people working it or charging against it. I've only allowed the people who have access to it to be able to see it, okay? And then the other thing from an expense reporting, again, other tools are going to be somewhat similar, but I can set up my expense categories. And so this way, if what you'll see here, we've got this broken out: air travel COGS, air travel G&A, fuel COGS, fuel G&A kind of stuff. This is how we have it broken out. We then have it mapped to the appropriate expense account. And what's nice about this is then when the employee enters their expense report and they go, okay, I've got a United receipt, that was airfare. They start typing in air. They just need to know, was this a direct job for COGS or was this, a G&A job that I was traveling against, right? And they know that, then they can select. They don't have to worry about trying to select, if your chart of accounts, if you've got 100 things in there, you don't have to worry about your employees trying to, scroll through some long chart of accounts and figure out where to charge. They know they had airfare, they pick it, they move on. Again, makes it easier for you. Makes it more accurate. Fewer things that you have to fix behind the scenes after the fact. And then similarly, you can have items set up. So just like I was saying that in QuickBooks, you can have those items for things like your payroll. If you're paying maybe the payroll through a credit card and you're entering, your credit card stuff through an expense report, then you can enter those in here and have that information flow through as well. All right, we've got another polling question, and then I want to get into the demo. So give me just a moment to launch this next polling question.
Okay, hello again. The third polling question: employees can be set up as follows: hourly, salary, mixed, or all of the above.
And I'm going to talk to, and I apologize. I meant to say this when I was on the employee setup, and I apologize that I didn't clarify it. If you look in there, and right, most companies have hourly employees and they have salaried employees. You can set up both. You might actually have an employee. I wouldn't say necessarily mixed, but again, you're probably going to have hourly employees and salary employees, and so you can set up both in the system. And so even without me talking much, it looks like most everybody got that correct.
Right. And we do have a handful of folks that have not voted, but you don't not have to. So we'll do about 5 more seconds and I will go ahead and stop this. All right, Robert.
All right, so now I'm going to switch to screen sharing, and give me 1 second. And Steve, if you will in a moment verify that you can see my, all right, so I'm in QuickBooks Online, and what I want to show you really quickly is just some of the stuff that I had on the screen. So if I go to my employees, I can see my employees here. All of these are entered with an hourly rate, but I could enter them, if they had salary, I could certainly do that. When I go up here to my gear and I go to products and services, this is where the way this is set up is by top level contract, then by base year, then I have my 3 labor categories, my option year, my 3 labor categories, etc. My pricing is here. And obviously it makes sense that as I go from my base year to my option year, my pricing is going up a little bit. So all of that is set up and ready to go. And then I've already populated an example here because I didn't want to waste time. I also didn't want to run the risk of a synchronization not work properly in the midst of a demo. So I've already set some data and synchronized it. But to show you what we're going to be working with, I'm going to come to my weekly timesheet. And actually, I'm going to jump over here really quickly. I'll be jumping back and forth a little bit. And I timed out. So give me a second to get logged back in. We go to my timesheet review. I'm going to go to last week. I just want you to see so that you can verify I didn't mess anything up. So I entered a timesheet for Emily. I put 8 hours on each day, so a total of 40 hours. I did my synchronization. So now if I come in here, I go to last week and I choose Emily. And now you see that the 8 hours is there. You'll also see that it pulled in the billable hourly rate because it was marked as billable. So it pulled in the hourly rate. So that information is available. The other thing that I did in my setup is just a little bit ago, I did create an expense. And so this is where I want to show you, I didn't set up an item one, but I could. But again, if you're entering expenses, probably most of you are pretty comfortable and familiar with entering expenses against a particular account. Ignore the account that I chose here. I was just picking something. But I could come down here and as well enter a service. So, or I should say an item. So again, for us, it might be something like a payroll amount or something else that you resell. So this here just shows you that again, I've got paint for the project that I bought of $249.99. It is billable. I selected my project for that. I don't want to make any changes. So what I just showed you is that I've got time in here and I've got expenses in here. Now it's magically the end of the month and I say, great, I'm ready to, to create my invoice. What does this look like? So then I come over and I say, time to create a new invoice. I choose my customer. And if you're not familiar with this, you'll notice that all of a sudden over on the right-hand side of the screen, this opened up and you see billable time, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, and down below, billable expense of $249.99. Now, let me show you a couple of things with how this works. At the top of this little slide-in window, and if you ever lose the window and you go, oh my, what happened? Because this happened to me a long time ago until I figured out what I did wrong. Just click this little arrow and it'll open up again. So if you happen to close it by accident or if you come in and you're like, wait a minute, it didn't open. Do I have any expenses? Just click your little arrow. If you think there should be expenses, this is another good point. If you say, hey, I'm creating an invoice for this customer, and you come in and you say, well, wait a minute, nothing is showing up in here. Why is that? So there could be a couple of things. One is check your filter. So by default, the filter is to all dates, but I could also choose a filter for last month. I can do custom, I can do this month, right? And last month kind of makes sense, right? Because usually it's the first week of the month, we're invoicing for last month. So, and maybe to keep from getting confused, or maybe expenses at the times that's already entered, I just choose the last month. So you might go, well, wait a minute, there's nothing here. Why isn't there something here? Check your filter. The other thing that I would tell you is, if you said, well, there really should be something that's here, make sure that it was actually marked billable. And again, I'm going to show you just really quickly. That's going to be both on the time. And so you want to make sure this should actually come over from timekeeping. It's not something you should have to fix inside of QuickBooks, but it should be marked billable, as you see here. And then the same thing on the expenses. Oops, I already have it open. I come in, and again, it's marked billable with my green checkbox there, right? So those are a couple of kind of error checking things if you run into problems. So anyway, I'm going to go back. I'm going to create a new invoice. I choose my top level customer. It says that I've got these items. Again, I can use my filter. I can come down and I can add items one by one. You notice that I've got an add. That can be helpful. It is for us sometimes, where for various reasons, I might look through here and we might say, hey, we agreed we're not going to bill the customer for this, or we agreed we're going to bill them next month, or whatever the case might be. So it does let you one by one choose those things. You might also have a situation where maybe you have to put all the time on one invoice and they want the material on a separate invoice or something like that. So you can do that. The other nice thing is that I can just click add all. And so now it brought all this over. Notice my window closed because I don't have any more things. And let's say I'm reviewing this. Let me just walk through a couple of things that you might do in here. I'm reviewing it and I go, oh man, I didn't mean to include that on this invoice. I can delete this. Now, what I want to be clear of here, I am not deleting the expense. Remember that I'm just working on the invoice, and I'm just saying just delete it from this invoice, okay? And notice that QuickBooks popped up and says, do you want to unlink, right? So that's really helpful that they use terminology. I'm not deleting the expense. I'm simply removing it or unlinking it from this invoice. So I can say, yes, go ahead and unlink it. Now look what happened. It automatically popped back over there. And so again, this might be where I say, hey, I don't want to include it. I'm only going to do the labor on this invoice, and then I'm going to come back. And if I do that, and I'll do that really quickly just so you'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and save this invoice. I'm going to close out. I'm going to create another new invoice for this customer. And again, I choose from the drop down. And now what's remaining is my paint, and I wanted to be able to invoice that on a separate invoice. And so there it is, and I'm going to click save. And now I've invoiced all of my time and all of my expenses for that supplier, or for that customer, I should say. Now, I want to come over here. I'm going to do a QuickBooks Desktop example in a moment, but I do want to go through our timesheet and tally. I had the screenshots for you, but I said that I would show you what it looks like in here. So again, what I can do, and actually what I need to do, and I'll show you that I can fix this, is I made an error in setting up. I assigned the wrong labor categories to these jobs. So I'm just going to delete out this. And all this is an association. So all I'm doing is saying I didn't really mean to associate these labor categories with these jobs. So now I have fixed this. And so now what I see is my 100 NASA job. I probably shouldn't have G&A and overhead and stuff associated with it. I do have computer programmer, but I should have some other stuff. So I'm going to come in here, choose my 100 NASA, and I say, well, yes, as a matter of fact, I should have the project manager and senior manager, and I have the option, and I'm going to go ahead and load for my purposes. I want to put all of these in here. So I'm doing that. I've now added them. Notice that I left the billable. So when I was in here, mark as billable by default was there. If it's got a little dollar sign, that reminds me that it's billable. And now these are all of the charge codes that are available for me to assign to an employee. Doesn't mean they've already been assigned to the employee, but now you can see that I've already narrowed down which labor categories are associated with which contract, okay? Now what I do is I say, Emily is a computer programmer, and so actually what I can do is even begin to filter. So I just started typing, I found the ones that I want to assign to her. I'm going to select her, and actually I'm going, let me do it this way because this will be better. If I do the base year and I say the base year is effective from April 1st of this year until 3/30 of 2023, I've now assigned that to her. I'm going to come back and I'm going to choose option year 1. I'm going to say that that one is available from 2023 to 3, I think I did 3/30 by accident on the other one, but you understand what I'm trying to do. So 3/31, I'm going to choose Emily again, and I'm going to assign that. And now, if I come over to employee detail and I click on Emily, so a couple of things, I can see that a bunch of stuff got assigned to her, and I go, well, wait a minute, I didn't really mean for her to be able to see these. So what I need to do is put an end date. I'm just going to make those disappear now. And now you see that I had previously sent option year 2 without an end date, but you notice that I've got the others in here. So you'll see in a moment, I'll pull up a sample timesheet for her if we were going to enter it. Right now, she actually has base year and option year 2 available for the same period. Obviously, that's not correct, but I just want you to see what it would look like. So now if I were to go to Emily and I were to pull up her timesheet for the current period and I said, add some work hours. Oh, I think we've got it. I've got it locked. So let me just go to another timesheet. So I select the customer, and now notice that it does have both of those labor categories visible to her. And the only reason that they both are visible for different years is because, you know, I could say, oh, wait a minute, right? She shouldn't have that. Why is that, right? So what's going on? Remember that if I come back here to my employee detail and I click on Emily, I can see that I've got start date. And so that would be, hey, wait a minute. Clearly, Robert, you have the wrong start date on this. This should be 24, right? And end 03/31/2025. And I could also come here and fix this one and say, this one should be 3/31 instead of 3/30. And now they're all correct. And if I go back to Emily's timesheet and I try to enter time, and notice again, even though I have other customers, she only has one customer assigned to her, so she can only select that. And now she can only select, you know, one labor category with the appropriate year because I put the dates in there. And then once they select their job that they're charging, obviously, and then they enter their time and submit it. So that's the basic. I mean, there's obviously some more stuff in here. I don't want to, this wasn't meant to be a deep dive on our timesheet, but just to show you an example of a tool and how it would work. Similarly for Tally, what I wanted to show you in here again is, here's that, well, let me do this. Let me go to what they call people, which are my employees. And again, these have been synchronized over from my accounting. I'm not going to do the projects because this is our live database, unfortunately, and I don't want to share all of that. I don't really care if you see our chart of accounts. There's nothing special or magic. But what you can see, right, is that I've got my air travel, my auto fuel, all of this kind of stuff set up so that when I go to enter an expense, then those are the items that become available. And again, I mentioned the actual items. So if I come down here, for example, to Paylocity stuff, then I can choose the Paylocity. I mean, I can choose this item when I'm doing an entry. Let me show you from this perspective really quickly. I can go into an individual level and no, I cannot do what I thought I wanted to do. Okay, that's all right. But I did want to show you just really quickly then what it looks like on the front end. Nothing exciting about my purchases unless you want to pay my American Express bill or my United bill. But if I come in here and I create, so notice, because those are the options that were set up, these are now, so I know, hey, if I'm traveling and it was United, obviously I put in the date. I can choose here and say that was air travel COGS. Notice that it went to billable because I have that item set up to say if somebody enters that, by default, it should be billable, right? I'm traveling against a client project. If I choose G&A, well, it should go back. If I choose G&A, it should be marked as not billable, right? Because we don't bill out those kinds of expenses. So just to show you again quickly, and again, from the project perspective, I would only see the projects that are actually assigned to me from that drop-down list. All right, let me show you what some of this looks like inside of QuickBooks Desktop. So we host all of our QuickBooks inside of a tool called SwissNet, which is a hosting environment. Great tool, remote access anywhere, anytime. Happy to show you guys how that works. Very affordable. Your backup, your security is there. Just an all-around awesome tool to use. But again, some of the things that we talked about is having your customers and projects set up, which you can see here. And I can find that by going to my customer center. My employees are set up. I can see them if I come over here to my employee center. Again, if I click on Emily Brown, I can see that there's pay items in here. And for QuickBooks, and this is one of the differences for QuickBooks Desktop versus online, you can drill down into these pay items. These pay items will then synchronize back to your timekeeping and improve how you can do some data flow and getting stuff into the right spots. I wanted to show you as well that I have time in here for Emily's timesheet. And I did enter, let me pull it up. I did, just so you can see, I entered 66666 hours in here for her, and I synchronized that over. So you see that we've got 24 hours that we need to bill. And then similarly, for bills, I entered a bill for this vendor for $379.99, paint for the project. I put a different dollar amount so that you can see I had done that. And my NASA program support is my customer that I chose from my drop-down list. And so again, very similar. Let me close out of a couple of these things. Primarily, I want to get back to my customer center. I can create a new invoice. And as soon as I select that from the drop-down, now the first thing that pops up is an estimate that I could work from. I'm ignoring this for right now. We're not getting into estimates for today. But then the next thing that pops up is this says choose the billable time and costs. And notice that there's actually some other time in here. So we had some other time that was entered last year that didn't get billed. So this is going to be a list of all the time that's in the system that was marked billable that hasn't been billed. And I should have said that when we were in QuickBooks Online. It's going to show you the items that have been marked billable but haven't been billed. Same thing for my expenses. Now here, again, in QuickBooks Desktop, you can see that it puts them on different tabs. My items, if I had them, they would come in a different tab, whereas QuickBooks Online, remember that let me just show you, when we were creating an invoice, well, remember there was it opened up over here. And it's not going to open up because I don't have anything in there that's marked billable that needs to be billed. But remember that everything would have been in one list in there versus when I'm here in Desktop, it puts them on different tabs. So just know that you're going to be looking at some different spots. But the same functionality, I can choose individual lines. In this case, I only want to bill the stuff for Emily. And then I said, hey, I also want to go ahead and bill this paint. Same concept. Now all of that has come through, and you can see the total quantity is there, the price, and everything. And now I can save my invoice and it's ready to go. All right, so we're down to the last 5 minutes. Let me stop sharing. Let's do a couple of things. Let me get back to my slides and we'll get a polling. Let me see if I've got, so we did our demo. Oh, let me just talk about this really quickly. Some common mistakes that we come across. Employees are set up incorrectly. You can also do vendors in here, which is really nice. So I should have mentioned that if you have like independent contractors or subcontractors and you're using them for work that you need to bill, you can create them as users within your timekeeping and your expense reporting, which is really nice. A couple of things that you get from that is you get the data in the same way that you would for your employees from an invoicing to be able to invoice your customer. The other nice thing is that it's a great way to validate the actual invoice you get from your subcontractor. Right? So if they're entering the time and expenses, and then you separately get an invoice that they're generating, then somebody in account can marry those up and say, yes, what you entered in our system and and the project manager approved matches what's on your invoice. So you've got a nice check and balance there. But again, if you have a lot of subs or independent contractors or something that you're using, it's a great way to help further automate that accounting, because now that data is going to come in and be available at the same time. But if the things that we find is that the employee or the vendor / contractor isn't set up correctly, the jobs or projects are not set up correctly. And again, ideally, you've got a top level customer, then job, then CLIN as appropriate. If your items are missing or not set up, or the prices are missing, then obviously, you're going to run into problems, right? So you saw that the dollar values came through when it came to the invoice because we had the prices set up on the item list. If you don't put a price on the item list, then you can't do that. The last thing, and I meant to show you this, I know we're running down to the wire, so give me just another 60 seconds. I meant to show you this, and I want to make sure that I cover this really quickly. So I'm going to open up this, it doesn't matter which one. I'm going to open this invoice and look at it. The other thing that I wanted to tell you is you can, now that I've pulled all this in, maybe I need to put a custom description for this particular customer. If they want to see something in here, I can adjust that in here. Let's say I come in and I realize, oh man, we just negotiated a price increase and I forgot to update the price on the service item. I can actually come here and change the price. So I have the ability to do this. Again, it's not ideal, especially if you put 0 and you don't put any, and you still got to, you've automated it somewhat, but now you got to come and enter a price every time. So that's a little bit of a hassle. But it is nice, again, that if you realize, oh man, there's something that's not right, you can edit the invoice from here. Oh, and I apologize. I think I flipped over there and forgot that I wasn't sharing my screen. My apologies. Let's get to this final survey, because I know we're at the top of the hour here. And then go ahead.
Oh, the fourth polling question. How much help do you need with invoicing automation? Send help now. Your pointers were helpful, or none. We've got this. And the votes are rolling in pretty quick. I appreciate that response. And
do we have any other? I don't see any outstanding questions.
I was going to mention, I tried to address, and I think you addressed a hand of majority of the questions that did arise. There was a question early on about how many service items, or if you need separate service items for all different customers, which I think you did cover that as well.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thanks to everybody. I know we're right down to the last minute. Let me just go back to the slides and get our last couple of slides up here. So we did our poll. Want to make sure that you guys know there, as we said in the beginning, there will be a follow-up email. You'll actually get a couple. You'll get one with your CPE certificate, and then you'll get one with links in it. You can always go to our website. Once this video is finished, we'll put the video in our YouTube, so you can go back and watch it. Now, you can't get CPE again for watching a recorded presentation, but it is always nice to be able to go back. You might want to catch something. You can also just go to our website and look at other upcoming events. We have a lot of stuff going on. We've got a few new ones that I need to get posted out there. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for your time, and we will chat with you soon.